to the last part of the tutorial, which is on the lighting. I just want to go through some of the different lights that are available in Unreal Engine. And the first one is what I call the directional light. Okay, the directional light kind of simulates the sunlight that is shining from the environment. So the directional light, first of all, it doesn't have any position. No matter where you position it, the light source will still look the same. And you can, however, control the light angle. Okay, so usually if you want to create a scene like this with a very bright, afternoon sun, using the directional light will be the best. But the other one is of course the skylight, which we have used. What the skylight does is that it takes the sky from the environment and then it will shine through into the building itself. So it's like an environmental light. And there are also the spotlight, which acts as like a normal spotlight, and which has a shape of a cone, and a point light, which is the shape of a sphere. Okay, generally I don't use spotlight and point light except when I want to do like a cove light. So when you use a point light, you can change the source radius, okay, and the source length. See, so to create kind of like a cove light. If you sometimes you want to create some kind of cove light, maybe not so bright, with a smaller radius. See, so using this to create cove light is quite useful, but I seldom use it because I like the natural lighting in Unreal Engine. So generally in every light there are three types of mobility: static, stationary, and movable. Static is completely static, you don't move the light. So like what I shared, in Unreal Engine we are using static lighting, so it kind of pre-calculate all the soft shadows and global illumination and superimpose it into the material itself. The other extreme is movable, so your light source is changing all the time and you are calculating the light source every second you run the program. Stationary is somewhere in between. You can't move the light source, but you can change the direction of how it shines. Okay, so in all our project we use static lighting because we want the best quality and we want the fastest frame rate. So these are the different kinds of light that we use, especially skylight that I use the most. So most of my projects I use only skylight to light my project, with sometimes a bit of directional light to give the afternoon sun feel if I want to. So it's up to you what kind of mood you go, but generally I will only use skylight. So before I continue, I just want to share that I find the brick materials a bit too reflective. It's like some kind of varnish has been painted over it, which doesn't really look like bricks at all. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna invert the roughness map. Okay, so generally if I find something like this, what I usually do is I just put a 1 minus from the roughness map, so that I'll get the exact opposite, a lighter color of the same pattern, and then attach it to the roughness. So lighter will mean that it is more matte rather than reflective or glossy, right? So once I've done that, you can see that it's no longer as reflective. It's a bit more dry and it looks more like a real brick. Okay, so I just want to point that out before I continue. So for our actual skylight setup, I just want to go through what setup I use. Okay, so for this particular setup, I actually prefer to use a captured scene. Okay, but then and then I will use a 15 and 15 intensity for my direct light and indirect light. Okay, however, for my skylight, or rather my sky material, I also have some changes. Okay, so let's go to our sky material. Okay, so I just want to share with you some of the interesting setup that I use Okay, the first one is sometimes I use a lightmass replace. You know, sometimes I prefer a slightly cleaner color. So instead of a picture, a HDR picture, I just use a white color to kind of like use it to build the light, but yet I still want the picture to show as my background. So what I do is I use a lightmass replace node. Okay, so in real time it will actually show as this, but when I calculate the lightmass, I will actually just use a white color. Okay, so you can do this kind of thing as well, right? So it gives you a bit more flexibility, whereby I still want to use this for my background, but I do not want to use this to build my light. I want to use something else, so I use a lightmass replace of this, you know. So it can be the other way around also. I want to have a pure white background, but yet use a HDRI to build my lightmass, you know, stuff like that. So you can do this kind of thing also. So for me, for this particular scene, I actually used just the original HDR, okay, to build my light. So I also wanted a slightly orangey tint to my background and my light building, because I want to create that kind of late afternoon feel. So I put in some kind of tint. So it's more like a 1 by 0.69 maybe, and by 0.44. So it's kind of like a late afternoon feel to the background, right? So that's the skylight I use. Don't worry about the brightness yet, we haven't turned off the bloom. But this is the background I use, and for my skylight, again, like I say, I actually use captured scene instead of a HDRI map, you know. So because I wanted a bit of that tint, yellowish tint to it to build my light. So this is the only light that I use for my scene, and I always believe in keeping things simple. So I mean, in my experience in using Unreal, these point line spotlights, unless you really need them to brighten up your room, usually I just stick with one light source and it'll be good enough. Yeah, so this is the light setup that I use for this particular scene. So now we want to talk about Lightmap resolution. Remember when we import the Lightmaps, or rather the static mesh, we have set the minimum Lightmap resolution to be 16 and the maximum to be 64. This is definitely not enough for most of our items or our static meshes in a scene. But for like, for example, the sofa, you will notice that it is made of very small materials or meshes. So like one button here is actually one mesh, and it doesn't make sense to have a 64 or even 32 Lightmap resolution just assigned for this one button. So for the sofa, what I usually do for something like that is that I will just set everything to the lowest resolution first, okay, and then after that, those that I need to be high, I'll set it to high. So for example, I'll highlight every static mesh in the sofa, okay. Yeah, there's a lot of static mesh, okay, every static mesh in the sofa, and set them to 8, okay. And then those big items like this, I will set them to 60, maybe 1 to 8, okay. So in that way I can save the light map resolution and to increase my light building times. Okay, so now after the sofa, we also want to look at all the other static meshes, what kind of light map resolution we want to give them. Okay, so a quick and easy way to do this is we can go to view mode, optimization view modes, and go to light map density. So there are 3 types of colors that are shown here. They are blue, green and red. So those that are blue means that not enough light map resolution is given to them. We should have more assigned to them. Green is just nice, and red is an overkill, whereby there's too much light map resolution has been assigned. So as you can see on the sofa, you know, all these small buttons here and here, although we have already set them to 8, it is still red, you know. So therefore really it giving them 32 or 64 is an overkill, you know. So and the rest like this, I have assigned 128 and it's still blue, so I will try and make it green. Okay, so I change them to 256 is green, you know. So yes, we can start doing all these things, you know, changing the light map resolution so that most of them is green, if not they are red. There are some meshes where we will not be able to move them out of the blue zone, especially those organic stuff, like the bed, blanket and stuff. Is okay, just try to, if you can't, then just set it to a maximum of 512. For the walls and the floors, I will be a bit more ambitious. I will set it to 1024. Okay, so I think you can continue doing this. So remember, number one, set the walls to 1024. Okay, and then set the blankets and organic stuff to 512 maximum if you can't get them out of the blue zone. And then for the rest, you just play around with the figures until you get a green at least. Okay, so I'm gonna do that, and then I'll see you in the next section. Okay, so as you can see, the walls, I have set them to 1024. They become red. The floors as well, and the carpet also, I have set them to 1024, and they have become red as well. But do not be afraid for this kind of very large static meshes to be red, especially if they have they will take in a lot of shadows, you know. So for the floors, you know, if you want the chairs to produce contact shadows on the floors, then the floors need to have very high light map resolution. So this is part of it. So for these big items, big meshes, walls, floors, just go ahead and crank up the setting. Of course, not at 4096. 1024 I think is okay, especially since we have detached some of these walls. They are just their own planes. I think 1024 is more than enough. The rest we'll just slowly play around until we get green, and this will then be a very optimized way of getting the best light building times, but yet still have a good quality for your project. Okay, so I'm going to do the rest and try to get the rest into the green zone. I'll see you after this. Okay, so I have gotten most of them green or red. There's still a bit of blue, which I probably won't spend too much effort to change them anymore. So glasses, usually I just leave it as blue because they don't really contain any shadow data. And then those objects that I know will be black, you know, all this stuff, like this will be black metal anyway. I'm not too concerned because they will be hidden by the colors anyways. Okay, so let me just change this. Okay, this one have to increase a bit. Yeah, so basically I think once I have most of them green and red, I'm good to go. I can build my lighting. The rest, you know, like this will eventually be a black, you know, metal anyway, so I can't really, I mean, it will be hidden. Any ugly shadows will not be so obvious. Okay, so yeah, let's change this to 64. I think I'm good to go to build my light, so let's move on. Okay, now that I've changed the light map resolution, I just want to do a quick light build. You know, it's not the final build yet, it's just a quick preview build to catch any mistakes. You know, if you have the time to do so, I think sometimes it's good, you know, we may have missed out one thing or two. So doing a preview build with these new light map resolutions will catch some of the things that we missed out. Okay, so again, let's set the skylight to 15, the strength to 15. Okay, and then for light mass resolution, I don't really want to change anything yet but number of skylight bounds I changed to 3. Okay, and then let's do a preview build. You know, it may take a bit longer than the normal preview build, but let's do one now, and then we'll come back after the building. Okay, just now I forgot to include this setting. Basically, apart from changing the number of skylight bounds to 3, I will usually also change the environment color to white and the environment intensity to 6. You know, this usually the default setting I use. Not really sure what it contributes or not, but the first time I built, I didn't change this to 6. I get a pitch black. So I guess this will probably take the HDR or rather the lighting and then boost it by 6 times or something like that. You know, but this is usually the default that I use. You know, after experimenting with the various scenes lah. Various projects. So after an initial light build, you can see that things look a lot cleaner now. You know, this is quite close to where we want to be. Of course, the only thing that might be, you know, not as per what we want are some of the more detailed shadows. You know, like the context shadows are not there yet. So if you look at lighting only, you see the context shadows are not there yet. So perhaps after this we will need to do a more detailed a final production light build to get to where we want. Yeah, so I think so far I'm quite happy with this preview build. I don't think there's anything else that I want to change, and this preview build actually took quite fast. It's less than maybe less than 2-3 minutes to build this. So I think that's about it. Let me just you know, move forward with a full production build. So now let's set up our scene for a final light build. I want to add reflection probes, okay, or reflection captures. We already have a box reflection, so let's put in some sphere reflection, okay, to capture more of those reflections that we need. Okay, some of them here. I also want to set my reflection resolution to the highest settings. So go to settings, project settings. Okay, and let's look for rendering. Okay, under rendering, there's a reflection capture resolution. We drag it to the maximum. So what this does is basically, if there are reflections in the project, it will be using the highest resolution of 1024 instead of 128. So things that you see on the glass, or if you have a very reflective surface, will not look pixelated. Of course, this has impact on performance, but for an Archviz project, usually I'll just set this to the maximum setting. Okay, I also want to discuss a bit about our lightmass settings. So this is the most important part of our project when it comes to lighting. So let's discuss them one by one. So static lighting scale. This usually I'll set it to 0.25 for an interior scene. Basically, it's telling lightmass how detailed you want the shadows to be calculated. So if you want to get context shadows, usually these have to be set at a very low setting. But of course, the lower the setting, the much higher time it takes to build. You know, so for me, going for an Archviz setting, I will go for 0.25. Okay, and then number of indirect light bounces, usually 5 is enough. But anything more than 10, I think, is diminishing returns. But usually I just set to 40. Indirect lighting quality is also a very important setting. So usually I'll set it to 10 directly. And of course, indirect lighting smoothness, you don't really want to smooth out too much of the shadow. If not, again, you lose the context shadow. You know, there are some people who, you know, some school of thoughts that the static lighting level scale and the smoothing, when you multiply them, you should get 1. But for me, I feel this is usually what works for me, this setting. You know, don't get too smooth, don't have a very tight scale, but I have also a very high lighting quality. You know, of course, the other important thing is decompress the light maps. I think that's also a very important settings, because sometimes they are just you know, still ugly splotches that happens when you forget to uncheck this. Okay, so I think that's really all the settings that I use, you know, for Archviz project like this. So now we are ready to do a final build. Okay, let's do a save, and then we do a production build. Sometimes it will take about 1 to 2 hours to do this, depending on the strength of your CPU, how many cores there are and how fast they are. But I will do a final production build, and then we'll come back and discuss further. See you. Okay, so finally we are done with our rendering. So it's taken me about 3 over hours to render this particular project, but the end result is definitely much better. The shadows are more well defined. You know, if you look at the detailed lighting, you can see the context shadows have been created, you know. So this is the feel and look of a photorealistic scene. You know, so even the chairs, the context shadows, these are what we are achieving for. Okay, so I think I'm very happy with the results of this, and this is what good lighting can do. Good lighting and good materials can do to your project. So now I'm just going to cover up the last portion of this tutorial, which is post-processing. So let's continue. So generally for our post-process, I don't really like the bloom, so I tend to turn it off, you know, so it looks more realistic. Okay, exposure is it really depends on how bright you want your scene to be. So I will leave it to you to the kind of exposure you want to set. Okay, so really depends, but I think for me the sweet spot for this project is around -3. Okay, so what other things do I add? Usually I will play around with the saturation. Okay, not really much, you know, just a slight touch to, you know, enhance the colors, the saturation and the contrast. Again, I'm not a post-processing expert, but just adding some of these touches will actually help in the color. Okay, other than that, really is I don't really use a lot of post-processing, and I'm sure there are a lot of other people out there who are really good in using this. So but these are just the few things that I do. Of course, the other things is I use screen space reflections. I try to make the quality 100%. Okay, reflection quality. Okay, I think that's really about it. Okay, so that's all I have to share for post-processing. Not really a lot of things to share, but what I use, I share with you guys. Okay, so let's move on to the next section. So in this final section, I just want to share with you usually how I use or what I do to take screenshots. So what I will use to take screenshots is this scene camera actor. Okay, so I'll put in the camera into the scene, and then it already comes with a lot of you know, very cool features as compared to the standard camera. So I just need to use a cinematic viewport and look directly through the camera, and I can, you know, there's the focal length and the focus settings, everything has already been set up nicely. So the other thing, so I use it a lot to take my screenshots. The other thing also I change my screen percentage to slightly higher, maybe to 300. Of course it will kind of like make my frame rate go slower, but I think this is worth it to take these screenshots. Okay, so you see, we just need to play with the focal settings to create those very professional looking screenshots. Okay, so explore this scene camera actor, and you know, you can take really good shots with it. Okay, so that's all that I have to teach in this tutorial lesson. I hope you learned something from this class, and of course we have a lot more tutorial lessons that we plan, you know, things like with the new release of the mega scans, we are looking more into exterior scenes and stuff like that. So stay tuned to the channel, subscribe to the channel, you know, like and comments, and make sure you hit that notification buttons, you know. So we really appreciate your support, and I'll see you in the next series. Okay, bye. So before we end, I just want to share a bit more on how you can support the channel. So first of all the PowerPoint files that we use in this tutorial, you can download it. So when you download the PowerPoint files and any project files that we give to the channel through Gumroad, your email will be captured by us. So we will send some marketing materials in the future if you allow us to do so. Of course, you can choose to opt out, but this will help us in our marketing efforts. Of course, the final UE4 project file, it will be for sale as well. So if it is priced at a usual tutorial cost fee, but this is absolutely not compulsory. So if you feel you want to support the channel, you can get the UE4 project file for a price. So all these links, as we are preparing for the YouTube videos, we will slowly add all these files into our Gumroad page. So some are not ready yet, some are already can be downloaded. So you can refer to the YouTube description for the links to where to download these project files. And also, I just want to share with you the way to contact us. We have a YouTube channel. You can contact us directly through email, and of course, the easiest way to find us actually is through our Facebook channel. You can directly message us. So these are the links to where you can contact us if you have any questions, you need any help. Feel free to just look for us. Of course, if you can, remember to subscribe to our channel and click on the notification button. So when we post a new video, you'll be notified. Thank you, and I'll see you in the next lesson.